Welcome to episode 64 of the Eat for Endurance podcast. My name is Claire Fullenbaum, and I'm a board-certified sports dietitian and runner based in Santa Cruz, California. I provide virtual nutrition services to teenage and adult athletes of all abilities, and I host this podcast to demonstrate that there is no one-size-fits-all nutrition approach towards optimal health and performance. Today, I have something a bit different for you all that I am really excited about. It's a race recap, but definitely not your normal race recap. As many of you know, I was at the Canyons Endurance Runs by UTMB recently, and I think around the time this episode will be coming out, it will have been about 2 weeks. I ran the 50K, but they also offered 25K, 100K, and 100-mile distances, with a 100-miler starting on Friday and the other races starting on Saturday. Canyons, if you're not familiar with it, is a very large and international event because it is a qualifier for both the UTMB World Series finale in Chamonix, France, as well as the Western States 100, with golden tickets available to the top finishers. So, as you can imagine, Auburn was buzzing all weekend long with many big names in trail and ultra running, as well as tons of amazing recreational athletes. Not long after I finished my own race, I watched the top men finish the 100K, followed by the women. I also watched Dylan Bowman and Corinne Malcolm, who had a live stream going on all Friday and Saturday, interview the top athletes. And then the top 50K finishers had their award ceremony. So I was literally surrounded by tons and tons of amazing athletes as I waited for Eric to finish his 50K race. And, I decided to make the most of the situation and see if anyone would be up for a mini race nutrition interview. Turns out, quite a few athletes were very happy to chat with me. I interviewed 11 finishers, including 6 pros and 5 recreational runners. Among the 11 I interviewed, 8 ran the 50K and 3 ran the 100K. I really wish I had a chance to interview some 100-miler finishers, but it just didn't work out. This was, of course, a random sampling of athletes, but I did observe a few themes that I wanted to share. All runners obviously commented on the crazy heat of the day and had to make some fueling adjustments as a result. Most people fueled with gels and liquid nutrition, and that makes sense given it was a very hot day, and also since most of the people I talked to did the 50K, so a little bit less of a need for that solid food. Several people ran out of water at some point on the course, which was obviously not good, in large part due to the aid stations being very far apart. Many pros aimed for 90 grams of carbs per hour, which, if you're familiar with it, is the upper end of the general carb recommendation for anything over about 3 hours, while others aimed for lower, like 75 grams of carbs, or they just didn't specify a goal amount. Some had their nutrition super dialed in, others struggled to get it in, but everybody prioritized fluid and electrolytes and, of course, ice. The main takeaway, as always, is that there really is just no one right way to fuel, and if you're a listener to this podcast, you know that's what I'm always preaching. There are so many different individualized pathways to a successful race nutrition plan, as you will hear. I'll, of course, be chatting about my own race experience, but I thought you would enjoy hearing from some different voices first. I'll let the athletes introduce themselves, but just a quick preview, I was lucky to get the top male 100K finisher, second place female 100K finisher, first and third place male 50K finishers, first and seventh place female 50K finishers, and the co-founder of UTMB. And just a heads up, there is a little background noise as most of these interviews took place either at the finish line or the expo, and I was just using my phone. It was a very spontaneous thing, so no fancy equipment here. But hope you enjoy these little mini nutrition interviews. All right, I have Cole Watson here who won the 100K, and how are you feeling right now?
I'm doing all right. It kind of comes and goes. Sometimes I need to, run for a bucket, but it feels a little bit better when I get it out.
Yeah, I feel you. I just ran the 50K, so I felt that a little myself. What was your nutrition like, and how do you feel like it went?
I changed some things. I finally hired a sports dietitian after my last race, and we kind of realized when we did the math that I was just trying to overdo it on the carbs per hour, just way too much, like over 100 per hour, which,
oh, wow.
I mean, it would work in like training. We do like 4 or 5 hour long runs, it's just because you can't really do too much more than that to get ready for a race and recover. So I'd feel good in training doing that, but then I'd race and, you're running harder and it's hotter. And so I backed it off to like about 75. And then I was using Scratch as an electrolyte drink. So it was just Scratch and water. These Never Second gels and some Spring Energy gels as well, just kind of alternating every 45 minutes. Taking a gel, just not doing it every 30 minutes, not being so rigid with it, just giving myself some wiggle room. And, when I start to get warm, I just got ice, I got wet, I cooled myself off, and then I felt okay enough to eat again, and it worked. So I was really happy with how things turned out. I didn't lose my cookies once this race. It just happened afterwards, and that's what you kind of hope for.
Well, that's brilliant. Congrats again so much. Thanks for chatting with me.
Of course.
All right, I'm interviewing the second place finisher of the 100K. What is your name and where are you from?
Priscilla Forgy. I'm from Edmonton, Alberta.
Awesome. And tell me about your nutrition today and how you felt it went.
I felt it was really actually good. I wasn't sure with the heat. It's always like a toss-up and how that will go. But I stuck with Huma Chia gels. I use those kind of predominantly in my training. And I actually stuck with the electrolytes that they had, the NAC Energy.
Had you tried those before?
No. So I know, it's like everyone says don't do it.
Yeah.
And I normally use Scratch, and I was like, they don't have many drop bag areas, so I'm like, I'm just going to hope for the best. And it was amazing. Like, my stomach was completely good the whole day. I used, whenever I ran out of that, I would use some salt tabs. And then I was eating like probably one gel every half an hour. And then if I felt like I was kind of like hitting a wall a little bit, I would just quickly eat another one, even if it was earlier. And then is that it? I'm like, what else did I do? I think that's all I could. Yeah, I had a piece of watermelon and that's pretty much it. Lots of water, like so much water.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that gamble worked out for you taking NAC.
Yeah.
How long were you out there for?
I'm not sure. How long was I out there for? Maybe 10 hours?
I love that you have no idea how long you're out there.
I'm like, where am I right now?
Well, congrats again. That's so amazing. Thanks for chatting. Thank you. Please tell me your name and where you're from and what race you did today.
Yeah, I'm Hayden Hawks, originally from Utah, but living in Boulder, Colorado. And I ran the 50K here at Canyons today.
And how'd it go for you today?
Yeah, it went well. I was able to take first place, and it's all part of my plan to get ready for Western States. So it was a good training run, training race, I guess I'd say.
And what did your nutrition look like, and how do you feel like it went for you?
Yeah, so I use a company called Precision Fuel and Hydration.
Huge fan.
Cool. Awesome. And I was drinking 500 milliliters an hour with their drink mix.
Which one?
The 60 gram drink mix, 60 gram of carb drink mix.
Yep.
But I guess that's for a liter, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're
so
good.
I was getting 30 grams of carbs in with that every hour.
Yeah.
And then drinking an extra 250 milliliters of water per hour on top of that because it was a pretty hot day. And then one of their 30 gram gels every half hour.
Yeah, no, that's what I was doing. I was doing the 30 gram and the 90 gram and a huge fan of their product. So I assume you've done their sweat test then, the sweat sodium one?
Yeah, I actually went out to the UK last year and went into the lab with them and did a bunch of work for Western States this year and got in a heat chamber, and we've done some sweat testing, and the guys were out here crewing me actually this weekend, which was awesome. And yeah, they're really involved with helping me prepare and get ready for Western States.
Brilliant. And what is your sweat your sodium loss per milligram per liter?
901.
Oh, okay, so you're not super salty.
No, a little under, I guess, average. But yeah, it's easy. It's almost 1-to-1 ratio, so I can, think about it and just do it in the race, and not have to think about it in the race.
Awesome. Well, congrats today, and thanks for chatting with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Can you tell me what your name is and where you're from and what race you did?
I am Heather Jackson. I'm in Tucson, Arizona right now, and I did the Canyons 50K.
And you won. Congrats on that.
Thank you. Thanks.
So I want to hear a little bit about your nutrition and how you feel like it went today.
I think it went pretty well. I think I was feeling it near the end. I finished in just over 4 hours, so I think maybe that last hour I didn't get enough in maybe, but it was also getting super hot. I think I was aiming for about 90 grams of carbs an hour, and I definitely got that in the first 2 hours. Into the third, maybe lacked a little bit there, and then that final aid station at no hands, I'm like, okay, you still have probably 45 minutes to go. You need to get something in. So I took a gel in there. Use mostly liquid nutrition with a gel on the hour every hour. So pretty basic.
And what kind of products are you reaching for? Which ones?
I use Herbalife 24 CR7 for my liquid hydration, and then I can't really say what gels, but
okay, no worries.
Herbalife doesn't make gels.
Oh, got it. Okay, no worries.
It's just yes, you could probably guess which gels. Yeah. One gel on the hour.
Yeah. Awesome. And electrolytes are in there as well.
Electrolytes in both. Yeah, the CR7 has a lot of sodium. I think it's 500 milligrams times 2 scoops, so 1,000 milligrams an hour, probably maybe. Plus whatever's in the gel. So usually like 1,200 to 1,400 milligrams of sodium an hour.
Nice. And what's next for you?
I have a gravel race in Emporia, Kansas, Unbound 200 gravel race.
Awesome. Well, congrats and thanks for chatting with me.
Yeah, thank you.
So tell me your name and what race you were running.
I'm Eric LaPuma, and I ran the 50K.
And I hear you placed third.
I did.
Congrats. I would love to hear about your nutrition, anything you want to share and how you think it went.
Yeah, so I did about 32 ounces of liquid each hour. So first hour was half water, half Morton. So like 320 calories, 80 grams of carbs. And then I took 3 salt pills. Each one had 140 milligrams of salt. Second hour, I did 3 SIS gels, so 22 carbs each, plus a 30 grams of carbs caffeinated gel, and then 3 salt pills, 2 soft flasks of water, and then third hour did Martin and water again with 3 salt pills, and then the last like 40 minutes, I think I took 2 SIS gels and maybe 2 salt pills.
Awesome. Sounds like you got it pretty dialed in.
Yeah. Trying to get between 600 and 800 milligrams of sodium per hour, and just 2 soft flasks because it was so hot.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, congrats and thanks for chatting with me.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Tell me what your name is, where you're from, and what distance you did today.
My name's Abby Levine. I'm from Boulder, Colorado, and I ran the 50K.
All right. And tell me about your nutrition, how you feel like it went.
So I had planned on taking in a lot of gels, like 300 calories an hour. Most of that from gels, a little bit from fluids, and it was so hot. I ate like 1 gel over the course of an hour and just basically gave up on gels for the majority of the race. And I had Tailwind, which is like 200 calories. But then you didn't see your crew for a while, so I actually ran out of fluids.
Oh, shit.
And it was my fault. There was an aid station at mile 7, and I blew by it because I had barely tapped into my fluids at that point. But it got very hot and exposed, and I ran out of fluids at about mile 13 and had to get to mile 16. And so then at that point, I chugged a bunch of fluids, and then I almost threw up from that. Lovely. So it was a little bit of triaging on the trail, but I tried to stay positive, and sure enough, I ended up feeling better. And then actually at the end, I was able to take in some gels. So it was really just a mental game. But it was my fault. I take full responsibility. Do not blow by the aid stations when it's hot. It's not worth it.
Well, also, there were such long stretches between the aid stations.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it was irresponsible to the long stretches. It's for this type of race where it's like a marquee race, there should be aid stations more frequently and also more crew access so you can get ice from your crew and all your other cooling strategies and your own nutrition, because they had NAC on the course, which I had never heard of.
Yeah, I have never heard of that either, and I found that really interesting that they had NAC, and people were running out.
And then NAC had it's fine, it just had a chalky taste I wasn't used to. I drank it anyway. Not ideal, whatever. Yeah. But they don't have any gels. Today I didn't want any gels, but it was just weird to not even have gels on the course.
They had goo. They had goo gel.
Oh, did they? I didn't even.
What gels do you normally use?
Precision. I really like Precision. So good. Just neutral taste.
That's exactly what I was using.
Yes. And then you have to supplement, obviously, with electrolytes because they don't have electrolytes. But that actually, I think, works out well because you can really key in like how much electrolytes you need.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
Yeah.
In a perfect world.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you did drop down from the 100K after all, and congrats on your 7th finish.
Thank you so much.
All right, happy recovery.
Thank you.
So what is your name, where are you from, and what did you run today?
Okay, so my name is Michel Poletti. I come from Chamonix, France. I can add that I am a co-founder with my wife Catherine of UTMB, Mont Blanc. And I run, today I ran the 50K.
And you won your age group. What age group was that?
Oh, an age group where there were only 3 people. It was 65 to 69.
That still counts. Congrats.
Thank you very much.
So tell me about your nutrition today and how you feel like your nutrition went.
Well, I'm glad we have a new partner, NAC. I'm glad to like their products. So I started wake up just 1 hour before the start. So I just ate 2 waffles and just like this, and a little bit of coffee just because I like coffee. And after that, on the different aid stations, I used to eat a little bit of fruit. So today mainly watermelon, a little bit of orange. I put always only plain water in my camelback, and I drink. You call this electrolyte, but
yes,
the NAC drink on the aid station, except for the 2 last aid station when I was quite. I needed to wake up. I was really tired, and so I preferred to drink Coca-Cola because of. The caffeine, caffeine which you find in the Coca-Cola.
Awesome. Well, congrats again so much. And I hear it's 20th anniversary of UTMB, so that's awesome. What are you guys doing to celebrate that?
Oh, yes, we are working hard with Karen and all the team to prepare this event. It will be a big party, a big celebration, and a great festival as every year for a full week in Chamonix and all around the Mont Blanc in Italy, Courmayeur, and in Switzerland. So it will be a nice, great party, a big party.
Big party. Well, thank you again for chatting with me, and congrats on your age group finish.
Thank you very much.
What do I say?
Well, what's your name and where you're from?
My name is Shannon Hadaway, and I'm from Carson City, Nevada. We run in the Sierra over by Lake Tahoe a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it was just fun to come out here and actually run on the Western States Trail, and it's brutal.
Yes, it was. I was feeling it. What distance were you running?
I was doing the 50K.
And tell me a little bit about your nutrition. What kinds of products? What were you doing?
Oh my gosh. So I usually, when I do longer races, I bring food. This one, I did nothing but gels, and it was spring gels all the way. And then I had some super fuel on board and some electrolyte and a lot of water and ice. That was all I did.
Dude, I was right with you. Yeah, I didn't touch my food. I didn't touch my Fig bar. Ice is life, man.
Yeah, it was too hot.
Yeah. Well, congrats again, and a huge thank you for helping me get out of the chair and not puke everywhere.
Yay! Yeah, you're welcome.
Happy recovery to you.
Thank you, you too.
All right, what's your name and what did you run?
My name is Josh Downey, and I ran the 50K.
And where are you from, Josh?
Washington, D.C., but originally from North Carolina.
Sweet. And tell me about your nutrition in this race and how you feel like it all went.
Yeah, so I did a combination of electrolyte mix, some ISO, and water as well. I had 2 liters with me at all times, which I found out was not enough in this heat. And so in terms of actual nutrition, I have found that goos work well for me. Not that I actually love the taste of them or anything, but so every 45 minutes or so, I would take another goo. And that's traditionally worked really well for me, but clearly about halfway into this race, I really, between I think miles 18 and maybe like 22, 23, it got so hot that I was clearly sweating out more water than I anticipated. So I wound up running out of water halfway between the aid stations.
Shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and we got our third place 100K, I think.
Oh,
nice.
that's awesome.
Yeah. My husband ran out of water in one of our races, and he also forgot to fill up at aid station. It was just so brutal.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah.
there were long stretches between the aid stations.
Yeah, it was super rough. Those 8 miles between what was it? Something in I guess it was the third and fourth aid stations for the 50K. But yeah, so now I just need a lot of protein and electrolytes to recover. So
Yeah, well, congrats on your race, and it was nice connecting with you. And when I was sitting in a chair, like basically almost puking, I saw you, and we we checked in on each other a little bit. So congrats again.
thank you. We made it. We did it.
We did it. All right, so we're here with Elise Mordos, and you finished the 100K. How are you feeling?
I'm really happy I'm done. It was a long and hot day. Nutrition was, I think it's always a challenge to nail it perfectly for a race that's almost 14 hours long. Honestly, anything that's like over 10 hours, I find is really hard to plan for because you only get over so many hours in training. So it's hard to know how you're going to feel. And I definitely had some nutritional issues. I definitely puked up some water, and I don't know, maybe some additional things around mile 15. I had some like shop block type things that just didn't settle well, and I was like,
Do you normally use those?
I've used them before, and I actually loved them, so I was like kind of surprised that I had a bad reaction, but you never know. And then I didn't throw up after that, so that's a positive. Good. And I kept food down and everything. I just kind of had to let my stomach settle a bit, and then I was okay. And then in the classic Elise fashion, when I had about an hour left of running, I was like, I'm done eating. So I probably should have had a little bit more food leading up to that, because I finished the finish line and I definitely had a bit of like low blood sugar. I could tell that I just needed some food. Some sugar specifically. You saw me, so you know.
Oh yeah. I got you some Coke you got Coke and you had rice.
Yeah.
You had your rice now and you had soup. I can't even think straight, man. It's been a long day.
Basically carbs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, congrats and happy recovery to you.
Thank you.
All right, I have my husband, Eric, here, who ran the 50K as well. And how was your race? How did it go?
It went great. It was a lot of fun. It was pretty amazing being on some of these trails that I've kind of read about and seen videos on for ages, to kind of really make the videos that you see kind of real in your mind because you're actually on them. So it was pretty cool.
And what did you do for nutrition? How'd your nutrition go?
Nutrition went okay. So I had done sort of like a sweat test where I kind of figured out I'm a pretty heavy sweater. And so I was really trying to get my sodium levels pretty high. So I was taking some Scratch as like the base of my nutrition, was really focused on hydration because of the heat. So I had a base of these Scratch hydration things were about 1,700 milligrams, and so I was sort of doing 1.5 of those per 2 liters in a bladder, and then another half liter up front when needed. And so I went through probably 3 or 4 cycles of that. So every station I was just filling up and up and up. One thing that happened though is there was this big gap after mile 21 for me. So I went 3 miles without any water. I just was totally tapped out, which never happens to me, especially when I'm filling up all the time. So I think it was just the course had a gap where it was really exposed, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one just drinking more than normal. And I think because of that, I kind of slowed down in a section that I was actually feeling pretty good enough to run. But I was really just taking care of my body because I was more worried that I would, have a real medical issue or something else because of the heat, because it was so hot that, I kind of rolled into that final station, refueled, and was ready to go again.
Yeah, that's a section that a lot of people had trouble with, and you definitely weren't the only one who ran out of water. And I was, amazed that you told me you had really filled up. Like you had 2.5 liters from the station.
Yeah, I think so. I think two things that happened. I think one, I really doubled down on the ice, and I think that might have displaced some of the water. So even though the ice melts, I think it creates less water by volume. I'm not sure about that, but it seemed like there was maybe less water as a result of that. So it didn't really compensate for cooling my core temperature down with the lack of water in the bladder. So I think I still probably would have run out, but maybe I would have been able to get a little bit further along. As far as like nutrition, I was sticking basically to 2 gels an hour of spring. And I was going off the table. So I was pretty going by feel. I think what I noticed is because I was really focused on sodium, when I got to the tables, I just wanted things that were sweet. And so it was, so I was like going for like gummy bears, and I was going for like, watermelon was fantastic. And so the things that were really kind of counteract that. And also I was like peeing a ton. So I think my guess is I probably went a little bit over the sodium when I counted, the sodium from the food I was eating plus the ultra ones. So I think it was probably still okay because it was a good way for me to kind of measure my status, because if my pee was clear, I was fine, right? So, but I think for perhaps less a race that is less hot, I could probably dial that back a bit more.
Do you remember what your precision test was?
It was like.
Was it 12? It was 12, wasn't it? 1,200 milligrams?
Yeah, it was like 1,200
milligrams per liter.
Yeah.
And mine was 13 something rather milligrams. So we're both very salty sweaters, but the difference being I'm a very low volumes. I have a very like low sweat rate, and you have an extremely high sweat rate. So, but I'm, and just for context, you finished in a little over, I think, 9 hours, right? So you were out there for a really long time. And so, getting a lot of nutrition in was important. But this really was your first race that you like properly hydrated. Well, so I'm super proud of you.
Well, I haven't run an ultra in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And I haven't, for this training cycle, I didn't train in a way that would really tell you that you could finish one of these. I think my longest run was maybe 17 or 18 miles once in this training cycle. So I think the last part of the race, I think partly because of the heat, but also just because of where we were and the historic kind of nature of the course, I was really happy just hiking it out and really just taking everything in. And it was, it like, could I have run faster? Yeah, probably. But I had such a great time sort of taking it all in, enjoying the environment, and finishing feeling just great, as opposed to like, we did this race, Sean O'Brien, where it wasn't this hot, but I finished that feeling just absolutely horrible.
It actually was, I think, as hot in terms of the actual temperature, but it felt less hot somehow, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the heat here, and I think this course, Western is in later in the summer, is known for the heat, but I think what I experienced was it's really, really dry, and so the heat sort of evaporates everything off of your body. So normally, because I'm a heavy sweater, like my clothes would be absolutely drenched, and through the race, I would look at my shorts and be like, why are my shorts dry? Like, I know I'm sweating. It doesn't make any sense, but I think it's just the heat. The people. This is the thing, right? You've seen videos where people talk about the heat. They talk about all this stuff, but when you're actually there and you experience it, you're like, this is completely insane. So I haven't experienced anything like this, and kudos to the people who are out there even longer. I don't know. Yeah, it must have been just a complete sufferfest out there.
Yeah, I had a little bit of the opposite experience. Like, I'm normally not very wet, but because I kept like dumping ice everywhere and drenching myself in cold water, but I kept putting ice in my bra, and like, so my front was just constantly soaked, which was really interesting. But no, it was a great race. I'm super proud of you, and
Do you want to do another one of these sometime soon? Has this kind of reawakened your desire to start doing more ultras?
Yeah, I think it has to be worth it, right? Like if you're gonna go somewhere that's just absolutely gorgeous, and this is pretty much like it's almost like running the New York Marathon for ultra running, because there's 1,000 people. It's really well managed. It's a historic location. It's got all of these elements where all of the environment sort of makes it worth it. And I think the cool thing is, what at least I've shown for myself, is that you can be undertrained and still have a great day if you know what you're doing. Yeah. Which is a really interesting way to think about it, because it means you don't have to like overcommit to like 5 20-mile runs, and you don't have to do all of those things where you think, oh, how am I gonna have the time for this? It's like you can kind of figure out a way to do it where you may not be the fastest, but you'll get it done and you'll have a good day. And so I think for me, that's kind of the insight that's really useful and helpful. So yeah, I think we'll find another one that's worth it.
All right, hope you guys enjoyed all of those little mini interviews I did. I also snagged a couple chats with 2 awesome pro runners who were at Canyons but who were not racing. Sage Canaday was spectating when I interviewed him at the finish line and had done an athlete panel for Hoka the day prior. And Corinne Malcolm was doing a live stream with Dylan Bowman of Free Trail all weekend long, as I mentioned before. Sage, Corinne, and Dylan all will hopefully be coming on the podcast at some point in the future for my more traditional long-form athlete nutrition profiles, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, here are some short clips from Sage and Corinne.
All right, can you just introduce yourself and where you're from?
My name's Sage Canaday, and I train and live in Salida, Colorado.
Awesome. And I know you didn't run today, but I did actually see you running a little bit. You didn't race. So what did you run today? And tell me a little bit about it.
We ran down towards No Hands Bridge to take a swim in the river because it's been so hot, and we were watching a lot of you guys finish, so it's really inspiring.
Awesome. And I look forward to having you on the pod sometime soon. Thanks, Sage.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
All right, I have Corinne Malcolm here. Tell me about your day. What are you up to?
Oh my goodness. We ran an official live stream here at the Canyons Endurance Runs 50K, 100K, 100-mile, 25K weekend, and it went better than we could have hoped for.
Well, that's awesome. I was in the in-studio audience cheering, so...
Yeah, we had our in-studio audience here in the expo, and then we had our YouTube audience watching from everywhere, including out on course, it seems. We had Leah Yingling texting in from Roby Point at one point. But yeah, it was, we were trying to do a full-on live stream. UTMB was like, we don't have the cell service. And then boy genius Ethan back there on the computer helped us figure it out. We literally woke up for the start, ran around in the early miles of the race to get footage, and then brought it back here and got it out to the rest of the world, and feel like we pulled off some sort of like magical feat today.
Well, it was really fun to watch. What were some of your favorite moments from today?
Oh my goodness. I think getting to see some of the 100-mile finishers hanging out here this morning when we got back from the start, that was really, really cool. Just like hearing their war stories from overnight. It sounded like a complete epic in the heat and in the dark. Meeting new faces in these races, like watching Jeshrin Small have a great day in the 50K, watching Priscilla Forgy like have an amazing day in the 100K, and then getting to like interview those people too. Like hearing about MK Sullivan battling it out with Katrina Jennings, and like that back and forth, and like all these little insights that you wouldn't get until you hear it from them. And so like all those little moments were just like pure magic, I think.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to the live stream from Western States. And what are you up to next?
I get to go home for 7 weeks.
Nice.
And I'm really excited about
it. Where's home?
Seattle, Washington.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then I'll be back for Broken Arrow and Western States in 7 weeks' time.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I look forward to having you on the pod sometime soon.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Corinne. Have a good one. Thank you.
And last but not least, let's chat about my race experience. So first, let's talk about my prep. My training was not ideal. I think I've made that pretty clear on Instagram and elsewhere. And as many of you know, the winter storms out here in California were relentless. It led to the closing of my local trails, and let's just say some days I was not exactly motivated to go outside. That meant a lot of my runs were on flat road or beach, and I didn't get as much climbing as I had hoped to get. Additionally, anyone with small kids, you know what the winter's like. It means a lot of sickness circulating, and my husband and I were not spared. So there were definitely some long runs canceled because of that as well. But I did manage to get a few really solid long runs in, including a 20-miler on my local trails when they finally did open, and I felt pretty good overall going into the race, despite, as usual, not doing my strength training as I promised myself I would. But, I practiced tons of different fueling strategies, and I felt like my race nutrition was super dialed in, and even though I think my peak mileage week was, 37 miles or something really embarrassing, I did feel pretty good. I will say my struggle, nutritionally at least, and this happened to some extent before the Mount Tam 50K, but it really was just those 3 days leading up to race day. I decided to do a by-the-book carb load as an experiment, and when I say by the book, I mean that I calculated my goal, as I always recommend my clients do, in grams of carbs per day. And what we use to do that is it's 8 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight for 3 days leading up to a race. So for me, that was 418 grams. And I tried really, really hard to hit it for those 3 days leading up to the race. That's not exactly new for me. Of course, I know the benefits of carb loading as a sports dietitian. I recommend this all the time. I write out plans, detailing how to do it. But by the book, what I really mean is I was keeping the fiber low. I was lowering fat and to an extent protein and really focusing on simple carbs. And if I'm honest, like in the past, I just really haven't hit that 8 gram per kilogram number. And I certainly haven't counted it out and really, really made sure I hit it. I was kind of like ballparking it. So I'd say in the past, it's been more of like a modified carb load. And I definitely kept fiber in. And of course, when you keep fiber in, that means you're a little bit fuller and you don't have as much room to get all the carbs in. So I was really, really trying hard this time as a bit of an experiment to do this kind of what I'm calling a by the book carb load. So long story short, let's just say that this did not work for me, or at least this time around, my body was not happy at all. I really think it was mostly that cutting down of the fiber more than 1 day in advance of the event, because I felt really constipated after the first day and my appetite was so low. That always happens to an extent before a race, but because I couldn't go to the bathroom very much, it was just really, really bad. I tried drinking a lot of carbs and I was, leaning on other easy ways to eat my carbs, as I often recommend to my clients, but my body was just not into it. So, of course it's normal to feel some degree of discomfort. Of course we expect bloating and weight gain during a carb load because you're storing more glycogen, and storing more glycogen means you're hanging on to more water. And then especially if you're also preloading and eating sodium-rich foods as well as your beverages, we expect that, but I was feeling really sick to my stomach. So I nailed my carb goal the first day, felt, mostly okay, but the second and third days were major struggles. And I think at most I got 375 grams, because I was trying to track it a bit. So I think that's as high as I went, and I just couldn't eat. So the problem was that this spilled over to race morning, as you can imagine, and it really culminated in me feeling really ill. I was super nauseous. I couldn't really go to the bathroom before the race, which, as many runners know, is like the ultimate nightmare, right? And then the real bad part was I was getting so much anxiety surrounding my GI issues. It just heightened everything. So then the GI issues got worse, and I got into this panic mode race morning because I felt like everything was just going to shit, no pun intended, but I was having these colon spasms. I was in actual pain. I was panicking. I tried to take my usual, right before the start gel. Let me tell you, that did not help, obviously. And right before the gun went off for the race start, I literally thought I was going to throw up on someone's shoes right next to me. Thank God for my husband, Eric, because I was freaking out, and he really helped calm me down and was just let's just chill and start the race nice and slow. And I really thought I was either going to puke or poop my pants on the side of the road within a few steps of running this race. So let's just say I was more than a little surprised when I started running and it all just went away. Literally, we started running and within minutes I was totally fine. It was shocking. My stomach was rock solid the entire 7 hours, thank God. And so I don't know what that was all about, but let's just say that's an area that I circled in red and highlighted and needs a lot of work for me. My pre-race breakfast, that's pretty fine. I didn't have any concern about that. It really just was that, those days leading up. So that is on my to-do list for next time is how can I modify that? And I think my plan is probably just to be keeping in some more fruits and maybe some sweet potato and just keeping a bit more fiber in so I can go to the bathroom and not feel so horrible. So yeah. And the other thing I will say is I did chat briefly with one of my colleagues, Kelly Pritchett. She's a 2-time podcast guest. She's awesome. As I was really curious what she does for herself and, what she often recommends for clients. And she agreed that she does not enjoy carb loading either and has to do a modified version herself, leaving things in, like I just mentioned, like fruit and other carbs with fiber until 24 hours prior. So, all in all, I'm glad I tested out the by the book version because, of course, that's what's circulating around in recommendations. And I myself have recommended this many, many times. It's good to know what it feels like. It doesn't work for everybody. And sometimes we just need to modify the strategy. So that's what I'll be doing next time. So before I head into the race itself, let me rewind for a second and just chat briefly about the race weekend. We arrived Friday midday. It was just in time for that pro athlete panel with Corinne, Sage, and Dylan at the expo that I think I mentioned previously. The heat, oh my God, it was stifling. We came from Santa Cruz. It's cool. It's an ocean town, right? So it's very cool ocean town, about 3 hours away from Auburn, and we were hit with this heat like a ton of bricks when we got out of the car. It's crazy that the temperature, which I think got up to about 90 degrees both days, it was like in the 60s and below just days before and after race weekend. It was, of course, a big discussion point of the weekend, as you can imagine. We met up with my Instagram and now real life friend, Elise Mordos, who was a recent podcast guest. She was running the 100K. She had an Airbnb. It was sick. It was literally overlooking the start and the finish line. And her 2 buddies, Logan and Doug, were crewing there. So they were staying there too. It was really, really cool to have friends at a race. We haven't really done something like that in a while where it's been more of a social experience. Normally, we're kind of just doing a day trip. We drop the kids to the grandparents. We drive really early. We do our race. We rush home, and we kind of don't get time to really chit chat or do much else other than run. So this time, having the experience of staying a couple nights and hanging with friends and really soaking up the whole race environment, it really was really special. All right, so on to the race itself. The 50K started at 6 a.m. I was a disaster, as previously described. Eric and I started together, and then a few miles in, as usually happens, I started to do my own thing. I felt really strong and was loving the course. It's parts of it are on the very historic Western States course. It was gorgeous. The sun was coming up. The wildflowers everywhere. It was really a runnable course for the most part as well. It was beautiful. So thankfully there was a cool breeze, and the first 2 hours were not bad at all. It was pretty comfortable temperature wise, and there was plenty of shade, so it wasn't that bad, at least for me, until the much later miles. So I was really enjoying it. I did decide to do voice memos on my phone every 5 miles or so, just to, get some in the moment musings. Unfortunately, I held my phone way too close to my face, and you can hear me breathing heavily because, I was recording these things mostly as I was climbing. So I do apologize for that not so pleasant noise. I decided not to include all my memos, but here are a few so you can get a taste of what it was like there out on the trails. So I'm about 5 miles in to the Canyons 50K, walking uphill, so perfect time to chat. This race, man, I've never had a start like this. I literally in the corrals thought I was going to puke on someone's shoes, no joke, and I was having crazy colon spasms. I was so nervous. And I think it was as much a physical reaction to how I ate as just some mental mind fuck I had gotten myself into that Eric managed to calm me down with. And thankfully, once I started, managed to get myself out of. And so right now, again, 5 miles in, I feel okay. It is definitely hot, but everything feels okay. I'm getting my nutrition in, and I saw a little rainbow, and there's tons of wildflowers. So I'm taking that as a good omen, and I'm going to have fun out there, and we'll see how it all goes. Checking in at mile about 11, about 2.5 hours in. It is heating up. It is getting warm, but I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling good. Definitely starting to feel the lack of climbing I did in my training, But beautiful, beautiful course. I mean, they're just gorgeous views, wildflowers everywhere. And I've never run out here before, so it's just really cool to be here, even though it's a literally opposite environment to what I trained in. Stomach-wise, I feel okay, staying on top of my nutrition for the most part, and just hoping the rest of the day goes well. But really cool how many people are doing this event. There are people all around me. I'm on another climb right now. There was a really gnarly downhill. I almost ate it big time. It's very steep ups and downs, but just gorgeous. So we'll see how the rest of the day plays out. All right, about halfway almost. It's about mile 16, just past the third aid station. That was a long stretch there. It is getting really hot. Just put cold water and ice in my bra, and overall feeling good. So this is where the fun really begins. Let's see how this goes. Mile 20-ish musings. Everything's going okay so far. It's definitely really hot. Taking it super easy until the next aid station in like 4.5 miles or so. And then we'll see how I go. Since I did not train adequately for this distance or this heat. But overall, it's okay. I'm getting stuff in. I'm moving okay. Definitely getting a little tired. I'm like 20.5 now. 4 hours, 45 minutes almost. And yeah, but still feeling okay and enjoying it. All right, mile 24.5. Just went through the last aid station, 7 miles to go. Feeling pretty good, actually. I think my whole strategy of just being super conservative and going slow and prioritizing the happiness of my stomach has paid off, and now I'm going to see what other gears I got. All right, mile 30. This shit feels hard now. Started to feel hard around 28. It is hot. Feeling it, but almost there.
Welcome in, runners! All of you guys finishing our 50K race, been at it since 6 in the morning. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On your effort.
Woo!
Recovering
style.
Claire
Tap water. I'm good.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm good. That was amazing. So fucking hard. Thanks. All right, we're done. Woo! Just about 7 hours. Oh, wow. That was pretty awesome. 7 hours and 3 minutes. Oh, I won't lie. Those last 2-3 miles were pretty brutal. And, but did it and felt pretty amazing up until then. And then the heat just really got to me, but stomach was solid and pacing was great. And yeah, awesome race. Yeah, that really was a pretty awesome finish, gotta say. Yeah, overall, I felt like my race went really well. I ended up taking in slightly fewer calories just because I was going into it a bit paranoid about my stomach, which is understandable, especially in the heat. But I did make sure to get in 60 grams of carbs per hour, which is the minimum amount I really should have been taking in per the guidelines. And that was mostly coming from chews and gels. And then I had about, I don't know, maybe 10 to say 15 grams of carbohydrate for my sports drink per hour. I usually get in, that's low for me, I usually get in more like 75 grams, if not in the 80s. And I also take in solid food like my Fig Bar and aid station stuff. But in the heat, I just wasn't in the mood. So I stuck with the gels, the drinks, and the chews. And I literally only took water and ice from the aid stations. That really just worked well for me. My nutrition included all that stuff I practiced throughout training, of course. Awesome Sauce by Spring Energy, which is one of my favorite gels. Precision Hydration 1000 drink mix, which has 500 milligrams per packet, and I mix it in a 16 ounce. Precision Hydration 30 gram gel and 90 gram gel, and Precision Chews. And really that was it. I went a bit heavier on the salt than usual, and I drank a ton of water, and I was peeing a lot at every single aid station, which was quite interesting. So I may have overdone my salt a little bit, but really other than the nuisance of having to go to the bathroom, I felt great. So it really was fine. And honestly, given the heat, I think it was the right move.
I rarely pour water over myself or use ice, but I also am rarely in this type of heat. And literally every single aid station, I soaked myself and put ice everywhere I could. And it really did feel amazing. As for time goals, I was aiming for 7 hours, mostly just because most of my more recent 50Ks have been under 7 hours, and I knew I was going into this, not only was it a hot day, but, I hadn't gotten the training that I really needed. So I figured 7 hours was a good goal, and I finished in 7 hours and 3 minutes. I usually go really easy until maybe the last 5 miles, and then I start pushing hard, and that's essentially what I did this time. So it's always fun to kind of pick up the pace and really start pushing and passing a bunch of people. The heat did really hit me big time around, I'd say, mile 28, and that's really when my legs started to feel it too. There was this really long downhill on pavement, so I felt amazing, and then after the end of that, I started to feel it a bit. And there was a very long exposed climb at the end of the 50K. I just couldn't run it all. The best I could do was a run walk, and I will say it was pretty strange to be walking so much in those last few miles. But, I wasn't going to kill myself to get under 7 hours for no real good reason. So I did my best and really pushed hard after the climb was over, which was pretty much downhill to the finish. And then, after the finish, I grabbed my drop bag and I mixed up a tailwind recovery drink. I brought that along since I know personally I can't really eat anything solid right away. Maybe I can nibble on a protein bar or something, but sometimes even that is just too much. And I knew I'd be waiting for Eric for a while. So the expo did have some pretty awesome food. They had like burritos and other snacks and stuff. I just knew I couldn't dig into that until later, and I did later. But I was glad I had the tailwind because pretty much, I don't know, I'd say within 10 minutes of finishing, I kind of made my way to the expo and I started to feel really dizzy and nauseous, and I sat down in a chair and I basically couldn't get up. And this really hasn't happened to me before, at least not after a 50K, maybe after like a marathon ages ago where I pushed myself really, 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 really hard. But yeah, I don't know. I also did a really crappy job of getting calories in that final hour, and I know I'm not alone in doing that, as some other people gave me the same feedback. But thankfully, there were some women chatting next to me, and they saw me struggling, especially when I thought I was going to throw up. But, they kind of kept an eye on me, and I was sipping on the tailwind recovery, and I think just getting my blood sugar up and getting some fluids in, I was able to cool down, and finally I got my energy back and slowly felt like revived again. So, got myself out of the chair finally and wandered over the finish line and caught the 100K men's and women's finishes, which was really cool to watch. And that's when I kind of started just like roaming around spontaneously, shoving my phone in people's faces for interviews, which again was so much fun. I will say, going up to strangers and, particularly some of the more well-known athletes and asking them for interviews definitely was outside my comfort zone, but really glad I did it. I had the best time chatting with everybody. It's always fun to kind of get different perspectives, and it was such a different format for me. So even, these little snippets, it was great. It also kind of just confirmed the whole, like, why do I do this? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but every time I do these races, especially like right before it's starting, and especially when I'm feeling crappy like I did this time, I ask, why on earth do I do this? And then I get on the trails and I have so much fun, and I meet all these amazing runners, and I'm reminded that this community is just the best. I will say, for the first time in ages, I didn't make a trail buddy. I chatted with a few people for a few minutes, but none of the usual make a friend and run for hours and learn their life story type of thing that usually happens. But that was okay because the weekend was pretty much nonstop social time. So as for my husband, Eric, he had a slow but awesome day out on the trails, and he finished in about 9 hours. I was actually really worried about him since he doesn't do great in the heat. The last hot race we both did together was the Sean O'Brien Marathon, and that was a couple years ago, and it was just a brutal day out there, and he kind of had this death march to the end. Thankfully, he had done the, precision salt test that I did as well, and we really, for the first time, got his salts and just overall hydration strategy pretty dialed in. He may have overdone it a little bit as well, but for the most part, he felt good. So that was great. And I just was happy to see him finish and feeling good. And he kind of dragged me out of the expo because, I was still wandering around trying to interview people. And, we headed back and cleaned ourselves up. And we came back in time to watch our friend Elise finish her run 100K. I mean, that's kind of the amazing thing about this race. The expo area and finish line area was just constantly on, it's just this scene is buzzing this entire time, because if races weren't starting, they were finishing, and people were just coming along. So and wandering all around, and everyone's still cheering for people. So yeah, it was pretty epic, just kind of wandering around and watching everybody, especially the 100-miler folks. Oh my goodness, that was just crazy. And one thing I will note, by the way, is the 100K and 100-mile both those distances had so many DNFs. It was pretty nuts. I think Elise was telling me that of the 500 some 100K runners, over 100 DNF'd, and that's crazy. But she finished, and she definitely looked like she had quite the day out there. So we kind of scooped her up and tried to get her some food and all of that. And after she showered, we kind of met up with them, her and her crew, and tried to eat something. We went to this little, it was one of these things where you put all this food in a bowl and they cook it for you, kind of thing. And that was pretty fun. Unfortunately, my appetite was just not there at all. So I really was struggling with appetite. Actually, all the rest of that day, not surprising. The next day, and even the day after that, although I did try to get it in, I really leaned on smoothies and things like that to kind of get the nutrition in, because obviously as a dietitian, I know how important recovery nutrition is. But yeah, it was just fun, kind of, again, having that social aspect, and we all hung out, kind of chatting, and then went home. The next morning, it was a beautiful day. It was literally 20 degrees cooler. I'm not even joking. It was just so ridiculous. And we finally got our chance to go down to the American River, which of course we ran by and saw a billion times, but we actually got to go down to the riverbank, right on a section of the race course, and put our feet in the freezing water. And I truly mean freezing. It was so cold. So obviously I had to take a little recording of this. So here's Eric getting into the water and making some interesting noises.
So as it turns out, there were no river crossings, ironically, and it was super hot, and I really wish we had dunked ourselves in the river. But now we're down here. Those are noises from Eric going in the river. It is really fucking cold. How's it feel? How's it feel, Eric?
Nice.
Dunking my feet in, and it is very nice. And of course, it's also 20 degrees cooler today, so that's super cool. But very nice now.
You know how it goes, though, with ice baths and all that kind of stuff. You leave your feet in there a while, and eventually it stops hurting, and it feels almost, I don't know, a little nice, maybe. Elise and her friends had brought a bottle of champagne, so they popped that on the riverbank, and we had a short but nice, quasi-ice bath to help our legs recover before getting back in the car and driving home to Santa Cruz. So all in all, it really was an incredible race weekend. Would I do canyons again? Elise said no. Eric said absolutely yes. I'm a maybe. I always like to have kind of different race experiences, so I don't necessarily need to go back to the same exact one. But I will say it was pretty awesome being a part of this kind of major event, because I'm not normally at places like Western States or UTMB and Chamonix and that kind of stuff. So I don't get to kind of really experience that buzz and that feel of these huge kind of events, the stuff that I used to feel when I was in New York City Marathon and everything. But of course, it's just a totally different community and different stuff going on. So it was nice to get a little taste of that as a somewhat outsider, I guess I would call myself, since obviously I'm not an elite athlete or in media or really in that scene. So I'm really glad I did it. And as for how I'm feeling, it's been about a week now at the time of this recording. I took a full week off of exercise, and my body is feeling really, really good. I did roll my ankles a few times towards the end, so my ankles were not feeling so hot, but I'm mostly okay now. So I'm not sure what's next. I really am enjoying this 50K distance, and I would love to do something in the fall, but I promised myself that I wouldn't let myself sign up for anything else until I begin a consistent strength training routine. And my husband is holding me to it, and I'm making it public now, so you guys hold me to it. But I'm just the worst when it comes to strength training. I've just really struggled to get into any kind of consistent routine. And I need it. I know I'm 41 years old. It's ridiculous. I need to do this for my own health and longevity and injury prevention and whatnot. So yes, so that's kind of next steps for me. And I really am, though, eager to run something else because I love having goals. So yeah, stay tuned on that front. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I really am liking the cadence of every 2 weeks and have lots more awesome episodes coming up. So please be sure to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribe to the show so you don't miss any episodes. And please share with friends and family or whoever you think might like this podcast, and rate and review the show wherever you like to listen. That is really the best way that you can support me. Thank you so much, and catch you all next time.